Akaginu. Akaginu swam to the afterlife the moment the blade waiting for her wasn't the one she expected. Known as the cannibal courtesan, she was a death row criminal infamous for manipulating men, luring them in, and having dinner with them once they dropped their guard. Even with her hands restrained, she survived long enough among other condemned criminals to earn a place on the Shinsenkyō expedition. Given the chance to earn a full pardon by retrieving the elixir of life, Akaginu was paired with Yamada Seimon Shion. During the trip, it was clear she had already chosen her next target. By the time they reached the island, she was preparing to add Shion to her collection. What she did not expect was that the blade she would face was not the one she wanted. After making landfall, Akaginu realized that Shion was completely unaffected by her charms. Instead of backing off, that only excited her further. Seeing him as a new and unfamiliar delicacy, she made her move and attempted to force herself on him. Shion responded instantly. Without hesitation, the Giga Chad carried out her sentence on the spot. The encounter ended before it truly began, cutting her expedition and her crime short the moment she gave in to her delusions. From here on out, full spoilers ahead. And the deaths only get worse. Yamada Seimon Aizen. Aizen's death happens almost the instant he steps onto the Divine Paradise. As the rank 1 Seimon of the Yamada clan, he was considered one of the strongest executioners sent on the expedition, a man who believed no criminal could overpower an Seimon in direct combat. At least, not until his death. Assigned to monitor the death row brute Rokurota, Aizen showed no concern during the voyage. Even when others worried about Rokurota waking up, Aizen dismissed this fear entirely, confident that his skill and rank were more than enough to handle any situation. That confidence collapsed the instant they arrived. As soon as Aizen made landfall, he sensed an overwhelming bloodlust behind him. Before he could fully turn or bring his sword into position, Rokurota struck first. The blow landed with catastrophic force, instantly turning Aizen's upper body into cheap fireworks before he could defend himself. The moment he falls, it becomes clear what kind of play Shinsenkyō really is. While not the strongest by nature, if even the Seimon leader can be erased in seconds, then no one is truly safe the moment they set foot on the island. Yamada Seimon Tenza. During the attempts to escape the island with Nurugai, Tenza is confronted by Tenzan Jujin. Tenza attacks first, slashing across its eyes to disable it, only to watch the damage close instantly in front of him. Even after realizing his techniques leave no lasting injuries, Tenza keeps fighting purely to buy time. The Tenzan adapts quickly, slipping past his attacks and puncturing his body repeatedly at close range. With his organs damaged, his movements slow down, and the pain sets in from multiple holes in his stomach. Even then, Tenza refuses to stop. When the Tenzan lands a brutal blow to his abdomen, tearing his stomach open and leaving him barely standing, he still forces himself forward. His throat is already damaged, leaving him barely able to speak, but he tries anyway, desperately attempting to warn Shion to run and take Nurugai with him. However, Shion's instincts tell him the situation cannot be saved. Even though it devastates him, he pulls Nurugai away and leaves the scene behind. To Shion, that choice feels like a complete failure as a human being. From his perspective, he abandoned Tenza. Because he does not know what Nurugai witnessed while escaping, that guilt stays with him for a long time, until Nurugai eventually tells him what truly happened. Unable to communicate, and left completely alone, Tenza continues fighting with his bare hands, even as the Tenzan regenerates faster than he can harm it. As his strength fades, he imagines the life he will never live, becoming an instructor of the Yamada clan like his teacher, and sharing a future with Nurugai. Moments later, the Tenzan finished him. Tenza's sacrifice buys just enough time for Shion and Nurugai to escape, ending his life on the island after enduring injuries that spell slow death. Horubo. Horubo's death happens before he ever sets foot on the island. While sailing towards Shinsenkyō, he attacks Aza Chobe, making the most fatal mistake of his life. Using his abnormal body, Horubo tries to restrain and crush him, tightening his grip in an attempt to end it quickly. Spoiler alert, it fails almost immediately. Chobe breaks free without difficulty. In a sudden reversal, Horubo is torn apart by the violence he tried to inflict. His body is ripped to pieces within moments, ending his life on the ship. Mudan. When Sagiri, Senta, and Yuzuriha confront him, and later when Shion and Nurugai join the fight, Mudan quickly proves why he never feared death. Slashes that should have killed him are brushed aside as his body reforms again and again. Even when his tendon is damaged, he simply adapts and rains Tao down, erasing everything beneath him. Even after Sagiri cuts through his body, it means nothing on its own. The situation only changes once Tao enters the equation. When Sagiri's Tao touches him, Mudan finally recognizes the danger and smiles in response. It's revealed that Sagiri's Tao is toxic to him. He is then attacked from behind by Senta, allowing Sagiri to move in for what should have been the finishing blow. That moment does not end the fight. After his body blooms, stingers erupt from his corpse and pierce Senta. Mudan also returns in his Kishikai form. However, the situation truly changes when Shon arrives. Unlike the others, Shon's Tao is inherently harmful to Mudan. Once Mudan is restrained, Shon strikes his weak point and destroys the ovule hidden inside his body. The moment the ovule is severed, Mudan's regeneration stops completely. With Sagiri holding him in place and Nurugai drawing his attention, Shon forces his way in close. One clean cut slices through the ovule at the center of his flower. Mudan's body collapses in on itself and his many heads fall silent. Yamada Seimon Senta dies after surviving a fight that honestly should have killed him way earlier. While he's resting after fighting Mudan, the Tensen's corpse suddenly moves. A flower blooms out of it and a sharp stinger shoots out. Before Yuzuriha can even react, our man pushes her out of the way and takes the hit himself. The stinger pierces straight through him, and almost instantly, roots and flowers start growing inside his body. As the bloom spreads, Senta starts hallucinating. He imagines himself calmly painting Yuzuriha while flowers grow out of his own head. His final moments blend with the same Tao-based corruption that consumed so many others on the island. Though it's peaceful on the surface, his body is literally being destroyed from the inside every second as the roots keep spreading. You see, arborification might look like a calm, beautiful death, but it's actually one of the most brutal ones in Hell's Paradise. Since the body stays alive long enough to fully transform, suffering the whole time, while the mind is chemically trapped in a fake sense of bliss, I can't really see it as a quick, completely painless death at all. Even then, Senta stays conscious long enough to help. When Mudan mutates again and attacks Sagiri and Yuzuriha, Senta forces himself to speak and reveals the Tensen's real weakness. Thanks to that warning, Shon finishes Mudan for good. By the time it's over, Senta can't be saved anymore. Yuzuriha gives him medicine, but it only slows the bleeding. Realizing there's no way back, she helps ease his passing and tells him to think of something precious. Forcing a final smile, Senta's last thoughts linger on the girl he loved. Yamada Seimon Teshin. After leaving the Yamada clan and falling into poverty, he's caught breaking into a home in search of food. In the process, he accidentally takes a man's life. That single mistake seals his fate, and he is sentenced to death like any other criminal. The blade that ends Teshin's life belongs to Yamada Seimon Shon, his former master. When Shon realizes who's standing before him, he hesitates. Teshin recognizes him as well, but he does not resist. Instead, he apologizes for the path he chose and calmly accepts what's coming. Shon eventually forces himself to act. With one clean strike, he brings the sword down and ends Teshin's life. The execution stays with Shon long after, shaping how he trains future students and becoming a quiet regret he carries with him into Shinsenkyō. With his head basically leaving his body, Teshin would lose consciousness extremely quickly, likely within 2 to 3 seconds due to the immediate loss of blood pressure and oxygen to the brain. The initial cut would cause pain, but only for an instant, before awareness fades completely. Yamada Seimon Genji. Genji's death occurs during the fight with Rokurota, and it happens in a single instant meant to protect someone else. As a royal executioner of the Yamada clan, Genji is experienced and disciplined, but deeply stubborn in his beliefs. Before even drawing his blade, he openly looks down on Sagiri, questioning why a woman would choose the path of an Asaemon instead of returning home to live a normal housewife life. That mindset collapses the moment Rokurota appears behind them. As Sagiri tries to warn him, Genji reacts on instinct. He shoves her out the way just as Rokurota attacks, taking the full force of the blow to his torso. The impact sends him flying, and by the time he hits the ground, his body is already failing. Sagiri rushes to his side while Gabimaru fights Rokurota, trying to keep the threat occupied. Bleeding heavily and unable to fight, Genji realizes he's not leaving the battlefield alive. Hearing Sagiri speak about her resolve, not as a man or a woman, but as a samurai protecting her comrades, forces him to confront his own beliefs. In his final moments, Genji places his sword into Sagiri's hands, entrusting her with the duty he can no longer fulfill. As the fight continues and flames spread through the area, Genji succumbs to his injuries, his life ending as the air fills with the stench of burned flesh. Yamada Seimon Kiyomaru. Kiyomaru's death comes when he's buried beneath the wreckage of a collapsing ship. During the fight with Rien aboard her burning vessel, the battlefield turns chaotic as her Tao continues adding victims to her collection. As the ship begins to break apart, massive chunks of wood and debris are torn free and launched through the air. One of those pieces, and a big one at that, crashes down onto Kiyomaru. The impact crushes his body and bone structure, causing intense pain as his chest is compressed and its breathing becomes nearly impossible. As oxygen's cut off, his consciousness fades, followed by shock and organ failure beneath the debris. Isuzu sees it happen. Moments earlier, she and Kiyomaru had regrouped with the remaining survivors after escaping the island's floodgates. They eventually board Rien's ship and reunite with Shugen, determined to stop her and uphold the Yamada clan's duty of executing the criminals. By that point, however, Rien's Tao illusion has already taken hold, warping their senses as she enters her Kishikai form. When the ship begins to collapse, Shugen orders Isuzu and Kiyomaru to focus on getting the criminals to safety. Kiyomaru never gets the chance. As the wreckage crashes down and crushes his body, Isuzu rushes toward him without hesitation, ignoring the danger around her. That decision costs her everything. Rien's Tao catches Isuzu mid-movement, leaving her completely defenseless. Before anyone can react, the Tenzin's power closes in and crushes her body just as mercilessly as it did to Kiyomaru moments earlier. Yamada is same on Shugen. Shugen's death comes after he literally went plus ultra and pushed his body far beyond what it can endure. By the end of the battle aboard Rien's burning ship, his Tao is already tearing him apart from the inside. When his strength finally gives out, there is nothing left to keep him standing. As the second-ranked Asaemon, Shugen lives with absolute loyalty to the Yamada clan and its duty to punish criminals. When the fight against Rien escalates and her Tao illusion overwhelms the battlefield, Shugen is one of the few who witness her enter her Kishikai form. After Sagari's first attempt to strike Rien's tandem fails, Shugen pulls her out of danger and orders Isuzu and Kiyomaru to escort the criminals to safety. He then watches both of their deaths unfold right in front of him. Even after being caught in Gabimaru's flames and suffering severe burns, Shugen forces himself back into the fight. At this point, he's driven entirely by the belief that fulfilling his duty is the only way to honor those who have already died. When Gabimaru hesitates to strike Jofuku after realizing he is Rien's husband and that he himself is also a husband, Shugen makes the decision for him. With a single Tao-infused slash, he splits Jofuku in two, creating the opening needed to weaken Rien. Moments later, Shugen collapses. The strain of overusing his Tao finally catches up to him, the right side of his face crumbling as his body shuts down completely. Yamada is same on Kisho. Kisho's death happens off-screen. After leaving the island by ship, his body is overtaken by arborification, blooming violently until it kills him long before he ever has a chance to return to the mainland. Kisho was assigned as the retainer of warped Keiun, a powerful criminal who attempted to eliminate Gabimaru early in the expedition. When Keiun failed and was punished, Kisho personally took his head. With his criminal dead, Kisho refused to cooperate with Sagiri and Gabimaru. Instead, he warns them that the island's rules meant nothing and that the remaining criminals were all pursuing their own agendas. After that, Kisho chose to leave Shinsenkyō entirely. He boarded a ship and attempted to escape the island. Unfortunately for him, he never made it far. At some point during the journey, Kisho was infected by the island's corruption. By the time Tenza and Nurugai later discovered his body, it has already bloomed. Flowers cover his corpse, with roots tearing through what remains of him, confirming that arborification had fully taken hold. When Tenza attempts to check if Kisho's truly dead, a massive tentacle answers that question, and makes sure he never makes it to the next season. Warped Keiun. Keiun's death is both violent and ironic. After attacking Gabimaru, his body ends up impaled by the very weapon he collected over a lifetime of his sick hobby. Skewered beyond any doubt, Keiun was one of the most infamous death row criminals chosen for the Shinsenkyō expedition. Even before reaching the island, he was responsible for annihilating over 100 weapon users, keeping their blades as trophies. The moment he arrives at Shinsenkyō, Keiun is already so excited that he immediately ambushes Gabimaru. He reveals that beneath his robes, he has armor grafted directly into his body, letting him survive attacks that should have ended him. Confident in his advantage, he declares that he will teach Gabimaru how a weapon should truly be used. That confidence does not last. Gabimaru turns Keiun into a human skewer, ending the fight decisively. Afterwards, Kisho takes Keiun's head as a souvenir. Rokurota. Rokurota's death comes after his body finally drops to its knees, leaving his head separated from it moments later. Suffocated by thick smoke and deprived of oxygen, the giant collapses just long enough for Sagiri to hold his head and end the fight. Known as the Giant of Bizen, Rokurota was born with extreme gigantism and absurd physical strength. As a child, he sent his own parents to the grave and wiped out his entire village. He later became one of the most dangerous death row criminals selected for the Shinsenkyō expedition. Almost immediately after arriving on the island, Rokurota destroys Yamada Seimon Eisen with a single palm strike. Not long after, he fatally wounds Genji while forcing his way through Sagiri's defenses. The battle that finally ends him begins when Gabimaru draws Rokurota into a prolonged fight. Gabimaru sets the surrounding forest ablaze, filling the area with thick smoke. As the fire spreads, the smoke slowly chokes Rokurota's lungs, leaving him struggling to breathe. Eventually, the lack of oxygen forces the giant to collapse. With Rokurota weakened and barely conscious, Gabimaru holds him in place just long enough for Sagiri to deliver the finishing blow. Lucky for him, he got one last lab pillow before meeting his old folks. Moro Makiya. Moro Makiya's body is overtaken by arborification. By the time the transformation finishes, the man who once commanded entire cults is reduced to medium-rare steak for centipedes. Known as the Apostate, Moro Makiya was a death row criminal sentenced for attempting to overthrow the shogunate. He had built multiple cults large enough to draw genuine political fear, manipulating his followers through his insane riz. After making landfall, Makiya encounters Yuzuriha, and quickly falls under her influence. Trusting her charm and her offer of cooperation, he agrees to follow her lead. What he does not realize is that he is being used as bait. Yuzuriha sends Makiya directly into contact with the island's creatures, forcing him to interact with the human-faced insects to observe how they behave. The outcome plays out exactly as she intends. His body begins to undergo arborification, flowers bursting from his flesh. Susubi Kimaru and Hyakume. Susubi Kimaru and Hyakume meet their end with their heads turned into living torches. By the time the flames finish consuming them, the ships behind them are already burning. Both are Iwagakure shinobi who arrive on the island as part of the second landing group. Alongside Shija, they make their way toward the floodgates of Horai, unaware that they're walking straight into a trap. At the floodgates, they encounter Rien. She takes control of Shija's flame ninjutsu and redirects it. The fire strikes Susubi Kimaru and Hyakume head-on. Even as the flames consume them and their senses begin to fade, Shija gives them a final order: stay behind and burn the ships. Once that task is completed, there's nothing left that can save them. Hagitaka. Hagitaka's life ends almost the moment it crosses paths with Gabimaru. When the Iwagakure shinobi locate Gabimaru and Kotaku, Hagitaka is among the first to attack him. He charges in alongside the others and is taken down almost immediately. As he lies there, his body already failing, Hagitaka thanks Gabimaru before dying. Along with him are a few other shinobi who lost their lives after being humbled by Gabimaru. Yamada Seimon Fuchi. Fuchi arrived on the island as the monitor of Gantei and quickly proved himself different from most Asaemon. Rather than treating the criminals as tools, far better than Ayano does, Fuchi fought alongside them to keep others alive. During the battle against Tao Fa and Jufa, Fuchi repeatedly takes direct hits meant for Gantei. He uses his own body to create openings and buy time. Even after the fight ends, Fuchi keeps moving despite the injuries already weighing him down. When Shugen later confronts them and demands Gantei execution, Fuchi refuses outright. Shugen answers with his blade, cutting Fuchi down and leaving him unconscious with a severe wound. As the palace fills with flowers, Fuchi and Gantei are mistaken for corpses and left behind. When an attempt is made to finish them off, Fuchi still forces himself back to his feet. Bleeding and barely conscious, he uses the last of his strength to administer first aid to Gantei, stabilizing him before finally collapsing himself. As his vision fades, Fuchi hears Gantei call his name for the first time. Unable to respond, he smiles anyway. Moments later, his body exhales its final breath. Gabimaru's parents. Gabimaru's parents were sent to the grave shortly after their son was born. They named him Saku while looking up at the moon. Generally, the name has a few different meanings. It can mean bloom or blossom, but it can also mean tearing something apart, creating something new, or even referring to the new moon. Unable to endure the village's way of life, they made a forbidden choice. With their newborn in their arms, they tried to escape Iwagakure and live a life free from bloodshed. They did not get far. The The village chief caught them before they could disappear. Their attempt was labeled treason, and both of Gabimaru's parents were punished on the spot. Ginkakubo and Kinkakubo. Their deaths come after every psychological trick they have failed. Their pair confronts Gabimaru by taking the forms of the Iwagakure chief and Yui, trying to drag him back into the trauma he has already survived. When fear fails, they switch tactics and pretend to cooperate, urging him to end his own life by ingesting Ginkakubo's toxic saliva. When that plan fails as well, they push even further, claiming that Yui never existed, attempting to break Gabimaru down completely from the inside. The fight ends quickly as Gabimaru easily cuts through them. Jugen. Among the Lord Tenshin, Jugen possesses the most extreme regeneration. His body can be sliced apart hundreds of times and still pull itself back together. When Jugen confronts Yamada Seimon-shun and Nurugai, he endures over 200 cuts. Even as his regeneration begins to slow, he tries to crush Shun using his own severed remains. Shun cuts his way out regardless, solely to give meaning to Tenza's death. Over the course of the fight, Jugen loses an arm, and his body steadily weakens. Despite being assaulted by the vines protecting his core, Shun drives his sword through Jugen's ovule, striking the true weak point. Even that is not enough to end him. Reduced to nothing but a head, Jugen refuses to die. Using the island's currents, he reaches the main palace and commits the ultimate taboo by merging with the god beast, Banko. What emerges is no longer just Jugen, it becomes a giant creature that begins swallowing Horai itself. Even decapitation wasn't enough. From each tandem, Jugen creates multiple clones of the Lord Tenshin to fight off the humans attempting to stop it. Jika's decisive blow also fails, as exposure to morning sunlight triggers a metamorphosis, allowing the Jugen-fused Banko to regenerate automatically. That's when Chobe ends it properly. Instead of attacking the body, he sends his vines deep into the core, reaching the roots that connect every regeneration point back to the main body. One by one, those connections are torn apart. With its lifeline severed, the monster finally collapses for good. Hoko. As Mei's condition worsens and arborification begins taking hold of her body, Hoko is the first to notice the signs. Knowing exactly what it means, he offers Mei his Tao, fully aware that giving it up will cost him his life. Mei hesitates. She understands the price, but Hoko insists. He tells her this is how he chooses to make things right. He admits that ignoring her wish to leave the island when she was younger was a mistake. His selfish desire to keep her close and raise her as his daughter is what bound her to a fate she never chose. Hearing this, Mei finally accepts. She tells Hoko that she has always seen him as family. When Mei absorbs his Tao, her body stabilizes and reverts to his childlike form. Hoko, stripped of the power sustaining him, begins to wither away. Before disappearing, he watches her one last time and listens as she says goodbye. This all happens long before Mei's own death. Mei's end comes from a choice she knows will cost her everything. After the Jugen-fused Banko is finally defeated, Mei escapes the palace alongside Yuzuriha and encounters Fa. That is when the truth is revealed. Turns out the Rien ruling the island was only a puppet, and the real plan is already underway. Within hours, Japan itself is set to be turned into Tan to resurrect Jofuku. With no clear solution and the weight of that reality setting in, Mei is forced to confront what escaping the island would truly mean. When the survivors regroup at the floodgates, they find that nearly every ship has been destroyed. The only remaining vessel is trapped behind massive debris, with the water completely blocked. As Gabimaru, Sagiri, and Nurugai struggle to clear a path, Mei enters her Kishikai, fully aware of what she's about to do. Using her giant petal-like wings, Mei forces the wreckage aside, opening the water just long enough for the ship to move. Gabimaru yells for her to stop, reminding her that staying in that form means giving up any chance at a normal life. Mei already understands this. She creates an illusion of herself embracing Sagiri and Gabimaru. She thanks them and accepts that this is the only way she can take responsibility for everything that's happened. As the ship sails away, Mei remains behind. Her body begins to break down as the power consumes her. In her final moments, she apologizes to everyone. Alone at the floodgates, she disappears as the palace collapses behind her, ensuring that the others escape and have a future she will never see. That should have been the end of her story, but centuries later, Mei completes her cultivation within the basin and returns to life. She begins living among humans once again alongside Fa. Fa and Tao Fa. When the humans reach the Bochu Palace, Fa and Tao Fa treat the encounter like a game. That confidence does not last. After Chobe turns on them and forces a real fight, Fa becomes enraged, especially after Tao Fa is injured. Dropping all restraint, the two fuse into their Kishikai form. Piercing screams rupture eardrums and spores spread through the area, infecting anyone who gets too close. Chobei blocks the incoming vines head-on. Fuchi steps in at close range, his Tao reinforced by Toma, and slashes directly into Tao Fa's core. Before Gante Tsusai can finish it, the fused body shifts into a defensive form, forcing the battle to continue at close quarters. The turning point comes from below. Gante Tsusai slips into the pool beneath them and disappears from sight. In the next instant, he re-emerges and swings. His blade cuts clean through the fused body, splitting Fa and Tao Fa apart and exposing their cores. That opening is enough. Chobei and Fuchi strike immediately, slashing into their tendons and tearing out what keeps them alive. Even then, Fa refuses to stop. His body crawls back out of the water and launches one final attack. Ending it properly, Chobei then floods Fa's body with stolen water Tao, shutting down regeneration completely. Gante Tsusai follows up and cuts him cleanly in two, ending the fight for good. In their final moments, Fa apologizes for failing to protect Tao Fa. She responds by saying she's glad they fought together. The two embrace as their bodies finally give out. Ran. After luring Gabimaru and Yuzuriha into the palace, Ran reveals the entire place is under his control. The floor itself starts moving at his command, trapping Mei and sealing off any escape routes. At first, Ran has the upper hand. His Tao cancels out Gabimaru's attacks, knocks away Yuzuriha's weapons, and lets him overwhelm them more than once. That changes when Gabimaru starts redirecting Ran's own Tao back at him. Every clash wears Ran down, forcing him to burn more power just to stay in control. Even after entering his Kishikai form, he still can't finish them. His body begins to crack from the strain, and his regeneration can't keep up anymore. Desperate, Ran tries to recover by switching his Tao alignment. But Gabimaru charges straight through the counter and tells Yuzuriha to end it. Ran expects her to hesitate. She's injured, low on Tao, and has every reason to retreat. As he raises spikes from the ground for one last defense, Gabimaru launches Yuzuriha into the air. She comes crashing down from above and strikes her attack straight through Ran's core, giving him a taste of what happened to Gojo. Kumukiri. As a high-ranking shinobi from Iwagakure, Kumukiri held authority over the lower-ranked genin, and was considered one of the most capable operatives sent with the second landing party. Well-rounded and highly skilled, he reassured the Asaemon escorts that shinobi were disposable by nature, loyal only to their orders, even if that order meant being thrown overboard or sent to die. And well, he proved his point. To prove his loyalty, Kumukiri was ordered to give his own life. Kumukiri accepted without hesitation. He passed leadership to Shija, drew one of his blades, and recited the required chant. Moments later, he carried out the order himself and turned his neck into a spray of red. Shija. Chosen as Iwagakure's next successor to Gabimaru the Hollow, Shija was an elite shinobi trained entirely by the village's brutal code. When Shija finally clashed with Gabimaru, the fight pushed both of them to their absolute limits. The battle reaches its peak when Shija drives a blade straight towards Gabimaru's heart. The strike lands, and if Gabimaru was still fully human, that blow would have ended him. Instead, he grabs Shija's arm and answers with his ascetic blaze, engulfing their body in flames. As the fire consumes them, Shija reflects on their past, on the village, and on the feelings they once developed for Gabimaru. With the strength they have left, Shija makes a whistle from their own hair and uses it to order the remaining Iwagakure shinobi to take their own lives and clear the path forward. Before her trip to the grave, Shija reveals that Yui is alive and unharmed. With a quiet smile, Shija wishes him luck and asks if he would fight them again if they were reborn. Gabimaru accepts. Iwagakure Chief. The Iwagakure chief's end exposes the lie that held his entire village together. For years, he ruled through fear and deception, using genjutsu to convince his shinobi that he was immortal. That illusion finally collapsed when Yamada Seimonjika uncovered the truth and reported it as treason against the shogunate. The chief was arrested, and Iwagakure was dissolved immediately. Before his execution, he was forced to consume the elixir of life as a test subject. It did not grant divinity. Instead, it warped his body into a tree. Once the transformation was complete, his head was taken and presented as proof of his death and fake immortality. Butterfly Doshi and Centipede Doshi. The two Doshis meet their end during their fight against Gabimaru and Gante Tsusai. When they begin taking their fight seriously, both Doshi transform using their insects and launch coordinate Tao-based attacks. At the same time, Gabimaru's Tao continues to evolve during the battle. After Mei helps awaken it more fully, Gabimaru becomes able to perceive the flow of Tao itself, letting him sense incoming attacks and identify weak points. That basically seals their fate. Gabimaru breaks the Centipede Doshi's transformation by striking a critical point in his arm. Forced on the defensive, the Centipede Doshi acknowledges Gabimaru's strength, even comparing it to that of Lord Tenza. As the Centipede Doshi attempts one final surprise attack, Gantei Tsusai cuts him cleanly in two with a single sword strike. In the chaos that follows, the Butterfly Doshi is also defeated. Jofuku. Jofuku's death happens long before the main timeline, but it is the event that sets everything else in motion. Jofuku was a famous explorer and scientist who discovered Kotaku while searching for the elixir of life. After settling on the island, he devoted himself to studying immortality through Taoism, uncovering secrets that would later shape everything that followed. In the end, Jofuku does not die violently. He simply grows old and passes away naturally, though his body has already begun to show early signs of arborification. Even after his death, his research became the foundation for the island, the Tensen, and the conflict surrounding the elixir. Long after he's gone, his preserved corpse is forced into battle against Shugen and is cut in half, but Jofuku himself is already truly dead. His death may not be the most brutal, at least not the first one, but it earns its place here because it's the death that leads directly to the next one. Rien. Rien's death marks the true end of Hell's Paradise and stands as the most important death in the series. As the true ruler of Kotaku, the creator of the Tensen, and the one pulling the strings from the beginning, Rien was also the most powerful character in the story. Everything she did was driven by one goal: reviving her husband, Jofuku. During the final battle, the fate of Jofuku's gold-covered arborified corpse becomes the key to Rien's defeat. Determined to destroy the last anchor of her plan, Gabimaru rushes toward it, but hesitates after seeing a vision of his wife. That pause proves fatal, not for Gabimaru, but for Rien's plan. Taking advantage of the opening, Shugen strikes Jofuku's golden body with a Tao-infused blade. Rien witnesses this and freezes in horror. In that moment, Sagiri bisects Rien's body and severs her plant ovule. The upper half of Rien's puppet's body falls into the sea and begins to crumble, appearing to end her life. However, Rien does not die immediately. Through mastery of Tao, she regenerates half of her body by blooming into flowers and retaliates by blasting a massive hole through Sagiri's abdomen. Enraged, Rien turns her attention to Gabimaru, vowing to take everything from him and the other humans. When she demands to know why he hesitated, his answer cuts deeper than any attack. He tells her he saw a vision of his wife. That confession completely breaks her. Rien is overwhelmed by memories of Jofuku. She imagines his face and hears his voice, forcing her to confront the truth she has denied for 1,000 years. In that moment, Rien finally accepts that Jofuku is gone and that everything she did was wrong from the beginning. Instead of continuing the fight, Rien uses her remaining Tao to heal Gabimaru and Sagiri. Having abandoned her obsession and given up on her will to live, she allows both her puppet body and her true self to crumble away. Rien dies by choice, her soul fading peacefully as it reunites with Jofuku in the afterlife. Death Row Massacre. Before the expedition to Shinsenkyō even truly begins, far more death row criminals are gathered than the shogunate can realistically control. With limited resources and too few escorts, the criminals are ordered to annihilate each other until only a small number remain. It's during this massacre that Gabimaru first shows the full extent of his lethality. Even with his hands bound, he tears through other criminals with terrifying ease, ripping out throats and even biting a man's neck apart with his teeth. Several named criminals die during the purge. Kido Shukan, one of those selected for the expedition, is killed during the shogunate-ordered massacre. Tanio Seikishi also dies in the same bloodbath, killed by Gabimaru after being forced into combat against his will. Another victim is Adachi Matagoro, an elderly but frantic criminal sentenced for playing with women and children. When Chobe initiates the attack by destroying one of the prisoners, Matagoro becomes his next target and is put down almost immediately. The final notable casualty is Nikimaru, a brutish man who looks down on women. He immediately targets Sagiri, believing her to be an easy target. In reality, Nikimaru never wanted to go to Shinsenkyō and only hopes to escape execution. That arrogance costs him his life, as Sagiri calmly takes his head in an instant. Aza Chobe. Chobe's so-called death happens during the fight against the Jujin-fused Banko. Once he realizes the wood tandon is regenerating through sunlight, it becomes clear that as long as the connection exists, Banko cannot be killed. By that point, however, Chobei is already exhausted and no longer capable of performing another coordinated attack. That is when Toma begs him to stop. He tells Chobei to abandon the mission, to find a way off the island together, and not to die the same way their father did. Chobei listens, looks at his brother, mutters a bitter curse, and then ignores him completely. Using the last of his strength, Chobei drives his vines deep into the wood tandon, reaches the internal roots, and destroys them one by one. That single action severs the regeneration link to Banko's main body, and the fused monster finally begins to collapse. However, Chobei's body starts to arborify, and with no strength left to resist it, he falls. As he lies there, he hears Toma calling out to him, and his final memories surface. He remembers worrying that baby Toma was too fragile, only to realize that Toma clung to him desperately. His parents reassured him back then, and in that moment, Chobei understood what it meant to be an older brother. Someone meant to protect another life. In death, Chobei finds himself standing before his parents. He kneels and apologizes for his sins, admitting every failure. Instead of rejection, he feels overwhelming relief. He realizes that despite everything he has done, he truly was a good older brother. His parents are moved to tears and open their arms. Chobei runs towards them, but just before reaching them, an unfamiliar figure places a hand on his shoulder, marking the end of Big Chobei. Except, it's not the end. Chobei is later revived when Guifa helps Toma by placing Chobei's plant ovule into the basin and accelerating the process through Tao restoration. He returns to life, and the brothers escape the island together by ship. Sometime later, they arrive in Hong Kong, shortly after British occupation, and immediately begin causing chaos between British forces, the underworld, and Qing agents. There, they earn a new name, the Way of the Twins. And just like that, Chobei's heroic death becomes just another fake out in Hell's Paradise. But if you want to see some truly disturbing deaths in anime, check out this video next.